If you're thinking about moving to northern New Jersey and Montclair, New Jersey is one of the destinations you're considering, then this is the video for you. My name is Ross Hyman. My partner Greg Nicholas and we are real estate agents in northern New Jersey, specifically Montclair. We know a whole lot about this area, and we're going to take you through the pros and cons of living in Montclair, New Jersey. And if you're looking for some help for your move, whether it's in 6 weeks or 6 months, please give us a call, text us, email us. The contact information is below. And if you like this video and you'd like to see more, click like and subscribe. We're going to take you through some of the pros and cons, and I'm going to start with the pros first. We're going to walk through some of the things, some of the best reasons to move to Montclair. The number one reason, and often a reason that people tell me they're moving here, is because it's close to New York City. Now, if you became recently employed in Manhattan and you need to commute to the city, you want to have a home and not live in an apartment in Manhattan. If you'd like to have a car, you'd like to have a pool, anything like that, or raise a family and know that you have a good school system nearby, Montclair is a great choice. There are about 40,000 people living in Montclair. Quite a few of them commute. Now, it's changed a little bit since COVID because a lot of people are telecommuting, so they're actually working from home several days a week, but they still do often commute into the city. I know quite a few people who do that. The good news is that if you're doing that, you can either take a train, you can take a bus, or you could even drive in. I've known people who've driven into the city frequently. It's even good if you want to see a Broadway show, if you want to go to museums. It's great for family entertainment that you have that nearby. It's definitely a destination for commuters. So as I mentioned, there's 5 train stations. Many people can even walk from their homes to the train stations. I see people these days taking scooters, electric scooters, bicycles. It's a very friendly town when it comes to alternative forms of transportation. It's not only, by the way, for New York City commuters. There are people who commute to Pennsylvania. I moved here to work in Wayne, New Jersey, and I drove to work every day. And it was super convenient because there's a lot of highways nearby. There's Route 80 that runs clear across the country. There's Route 95, I-95 that runs north-south through the country. And then there are more local highways like Route 46, Route 280, and they're all super convenient to help you get to where you're going. Now, another pro that you'll find with Montclair is that a lot of people call it an urban-suburban community. And what they mean by that is that you've got the best of both worlds. There's a little bit of density like you'd have in an urban community. There's places where there's condominiums and apartments and houses are closer together. And then there's parts of it where there's estates and people have 2 acres and a pool and a carriage house and things like that. So it's a mix as far as the housing stock is concerned. Also, from a business perspective, there's several little villages. In fact, there's about 4 distinct shopping areas. Those shopping areas also correlate very well with the train stations. So you've got these little commutable villages and places that people can walk to, bicycle to. They can use their scooters. It's very common to see people commuting around town with various forms of transportation. The urban-suburban idea is very popular here. In fact, another reason that people move here is because it has a little bit of that city feel. People from Brooklyn and Manhattan are moving here quite a bit because it has a similar type of feel, but enough room and space to move around, and it's significantly cheaper than living in, say, Park Slope in Brooklyn or, of course, in Manhattan. It offers a lot of options for people otherwise are looking for a more affordable alternative to Manhattan, or who like the lifestyle that Montclair has to offer and they're going to be working in Manhattan. So if you're moving from another part of the country and you're not used to living in a city and you don't want to cram yourself into a smaller space, Montclair is a great option. Another pro, I should say, for living in Montclair is the schools. Montclair has a very highly rated school system. You can look on niche.com or other websites to look at the ratings for the schools. There are 7 public elementary schools in Montclair and 3 middle schools and then one high school. That's the public system. There are also private schools like Montclair Kimberly Academy. There's there's a few parochial schools, and then there's Le Cordaire Academy. There's a number of private options as well. That makes Montclair a really good destination as far as towns that have good school systems. You've got a lot of options. So I would say that's another great pro. There's also Montclair State University that's in Montclair. It also partly is in Little Falls, but Montclair State University is considered one of the best state schools, state universities in New Jersey, and it has more than 250 majors available. There's a huge student body. I think it's more than 10,000. And I know quite a few people that have gone there, and they had a great experience. You can live on campus or you can commute to the school. So it's really flexible for people in the area. In fact, there's a lot of professors, obviously, that also work there, or staff that work at the university that live in Montclair. So education is a priority in the area. It's very convenient. It's something that a lot of people come here for. Let's see, there's lots of activities. Another pro, number 4, I would say, of the pros, is that there's a tremendous number of activities in the area. There are parks, there's golf, tennis, hiking, there's equestrian centers nearby, not necessarily in Montclair, but close by. There's rowing, there's, what else do we have? We have pools, beaches. There's 3 public pools in Montclair for a very low cost. I don't even know if it's like $100 something a season. You can belong to the public pools in Montclair, and they're really beautiful pools and well maintained, great for the family for activities. So things like that. There's mountains nearby. You've got mountains and beaches within an hour of Montclair. So you can go to the Jersey Shore, or you can go up to the mountains in New York State. There are restaurants. There are incredible restaurants, Faubourg and oh gosh, there's Cuban Pete's, there's Raymond's, there's Misab, which is an Ethiopian restaurant. There's tons of great restaurants with world-class chefs, and that's not to say that there's not less expensive food. There are destination restaurants in Montclair. There are also theaters in Montclair. There's the Wilmot, which I saw Jon Stewart and Tom Segura there not too long ago, and I had second row seats. You can get great seats to premier performers at places like the Wilmot theaters in the area. We've got other venues here as well. There's the Montclair Art Museum. There are other cultural things. The Montclair Film is here, and they have a film festival every year that draws A-list celebrities with their films. And so it's very exciting. If you don't like any of that and you just want to go shopping, there's plenty of shopping locally. And then there's malls like Willowbrook, which is in Wayne, not too far away. There's Short Hills Mall, which is not too far to the south. So Wayne is north and Short Hills is south. You also have access to everything in Manhattan. So you've got all the Broadway shows, you've got all the museums and all the cultural events that happen in Manhattan. It's really a tremendous area for entertainment and activities with the family. The parks in Montclair are absolutely beautiful. They're big, they're spacious, they're well maintained. There's great playground equipment for the kids. I used to take my daughter to the park every weekend to play on the swing sets and the jungle gyms and things that they have. And it was one of our main activities. It really helped us fill a lot of the weekend time and keep my daughter busy. Here we are at the 5th pro of living in Montclair. Now the 5th, and I think one of the most important, is the quality of the homes. The architecture in Montclair is absolutely second to none. There are historic homes. There's so many historic homes. There are English manors and Tudors and Cape Cods, and the variety is tremendous. So if you are looking for something that's not a cookie cutter home, Montclair has an incredible variety of real estate. And while it's not cheap, what you get is a very high quality home. These homes were built many of them in the late 1800s, some of them the early 1900s, and as recent as the 1950s. And then, of course, there's some that are more modern that have been built more recently. Most of it is they're more classic, traditional homes, super well built, made to last, wood floors, beautiful wood floors, beautiful, tile work in many of them, and details, architectural details. It's really one of the nicest places that I've ever seen in terms of its housing. And around the housing, it's not just about the houses, the trees. I mean, the town cares a lot about trees. In fact, if you cut down a tree in this town, as a property owner, you have to either pay the township for cutting that down, or you have to replace it. And so what you'll see is, and I think this makes the neighborhoods look really beautiful, is you'll see these huge tree canopies on streets, where you'll see trees that are 50 to 70 feet high or more. And that really adds to the character. If you've ever been in a town where they clear cut everything and they built new homes and all the homes look alike, and then you've got all these new trees that are 6 feet tall and 8 feet tall, it takes 20, 30 years for them to reach maturity. There are trees in this town that are hundreds of years old. And it really creates an ambiance, a look for the town. And it creates a lot of shade, and there's a lot of wildlife. I've seen deer walking through my yard, and yet we're not that far from the city. So it's a real interesting dichotomy. So the homes are a real plus. Now, I'm going to take a little breather here, and we're going to take a walk back to the cons. But before I do, if you like this video and you'd like to see more like it, please like and subscribe below. Or if you'd like to talk to myself or Greg Nicholas, my business partner, about moving to Montclair, contact us through our phone number below. You can text us, you can call us, or you can email us at the email shown below. Cons of living in Montclair. I mentioned that it's great for commuters. Well, there's a downside to it being great for commuters, and that is that there's a lot of congestion, especially during rush hour. So a lot of people do have to get to work, whether they're driving or whether they're taking a train or a bus. And that is, it can be a challenge depending on what time you're going. So you have to prepare for that. In fact, there's parking lots. If you don't live walking distance from a train station, you have to plan for either your parking, or you're going to ride a bike or take a scooter there. And the parking lots, many of the parking lots, they require a monthly fee. So that would be fine, except they don't even always have available spots. So you may end up having to go to a train station that's even farther than the one that's closest to your home to get a parking spot. You'll find a way to work it out. There are a number of ways you can do it. You can even drive to another town. You can drive to Harrison, which is very close by, and take a PATH train if you work downtown in Manhattan. It's super convenient. They have a huge parking lot, and the PATH train gets to Manhattan in, 10 or 15 minutes. It's really an amazing option. And of course, there are buses. So you might have a bus that runs from your home or near your home into the city, into the Port Authority, and that's a solution. But you're still going to have to deal with the congestion and going to and from the train station or the bus station, and that's not something that everybody wants to deal with. Of course, if you're going to drive in, the congestions, I don't know that I need to tell you about the congestion of driving into Manhattan, but you're either going to take one of the tunnels, the Holland, the Lincoln, or you're going to take the George Washington Bridge, and there's almost no way to avoid traffic congestion during a weekday going into the city or coming out of the city. Also, there's been proposals to have congestion pricing for going in and out of the city. However, recently that got nixed, so that's not actually happening, where they were going to charge for just driving into the city a certain amount of money. But as it stands now, that's not happening. So that's good news. Another con of living in Montclair, the high cost of living. So because of the fact that so many people move from New York, they move from Brooklyn, they move from higher priced areas, there's a very high demand for homes in Montclair. There are, that's not to mention people who move from other parts of the country or even other towns in New Jersey. It's a very in-demand town. And because of that, the prices get driven up. There's not a huge amount of inventory right now. People have been holding on to their properties because they don't want to pay a higher interest rate, or they don't want to get less of a house for the same amount of money that they're paying now. At the current time, the inventory is very low. The demand is very high. And what there's a lot of people who have either they're used to paying a lot of money to live in Manhattan, and moving here, even though it's relatively high in New Jersey or in the rest of the country to live here, they to them it's not a lot of money. They might spend $1 million on a one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, and in Montclair you could get, a 4 or 5 bedroom home. So there are people who come in and just pay cash. So that makes it challenging to buy a home. The cost of living is expensive. That's not even addressing the fact that, gasoline and groceries and those things are high right now. But the housing inventory, it's gone up double digits year over year because there's so much demand to move here. So that's definitely not a pro. I mentioned the congestion of commuting, but there's also congestion with parking. Montclair, because it is in demand and there's a lot of development going on. When I say development, I mean there's a new hotel. There's two hotels that actually went up recently: the MC and the George. The George is more of a boutique hotel. The MC is a more large scale hotel. And the MC, incidentally, is owned by, as I understand, Bobby Brown, the makeup entrepreneur, the cosmetics entrepreneur, and her husband. And they're beautiful, beautiful hotels, but those are new. And then there's condominiums and apartments that have been built recently. So mid-rises, like 8 stories, the Sienna, Valley and Bloom, and buildings like that along Bloomfield Avenue. The consequence of that is that there's more vehicle congestion, and so the town has been building parking lots and trying to make more space for parking, but it's definitely got a little more challenging to park in town. Another thing to note is if you own a home or rent a home in the area, most of the streets don't allow overnight parking on the street. So without a parking permit. So you either need to park in your driveway or you need to get a parking permit. So those are the two options that you have. And then if you have a parking permit, you still may not be able to park on your street. You may have to park on a street that allows for permits. So those are details that you have to consider. And if you're working with a real estate agent, they should be able to help you parse that out as you're looking at properties to tell you what your options are for the homes that you're looking at. I mentioned that it's getting more congested. I meant, and that the cost of buying homes is high, and part of that is because of New Yorkers. So, and I don't mean this as a slight, because I have been a New Yorker, but that New Yorkers are moving in, and what that does is it really inflates the cost of the property because, and I've seen this where there's multiple bids on a property, and someone comes in. I mentioned this in one of the other cons, and they're willing to pay well over asking price with cash. There are many people who live in Manhattan currently that have the means to pay cash for these homes. Of course, there are people everywhere that have cash to pay for homes, but this is especially attractive to Manhattanites who want to get out of the city and still want to have the convenience of the city. So that does make it more challenging, is having to compete with people coming from more expensive areas like Manhattan and Brooklyn. Now, I mentioned that my fifth pro was the homes, the architecture and the quality of the homes, but that's also a con. And that's the one I'm gonna end this on. These are historic homes. They're beautiful architecturally, but they're old. There are many of these homes that don't have air conditioning. They don't have HVAC. So you may be using window units, or you may want to install HVAC. There are repair costs and maintenance costs. Also, I mentioned the trees and the landscaping in this town. You could spend a lot of money maintaining your property, just mowing the lawn, maintaining the shrubbery, maintaining the trees. I think one year I spent, just on trimming trees, I spent almost $5,000. So, you have to look at that as you're assessing properties and deciding if you want to move here. You have to consider what you're going to have to maintain on that property. And that's one of the challenges. Um, even things like just the structures of some of these old houses are, uh, they're not. I was looking at a house earlier today. It wasn't in Montclair, but it was in a nearby town, and it had stone and clay. It was so old that it wasn't built with concrete; it was built with clay. So you really have to have an educated agent working with you and know what you're looking at, and also, of course, have an inspection before you buy a property, so you know exactly what you're getting into. But that is one of the challenges with the area with Montclair, and one of the cons, I would say, is that the beautiful historic homes come with a price. I also didn't mention this, but if it is a historic home, you can't just update it any way you want. You have to go through an approval process with the town. There's a planning committee, there's a, historical preservation committee, and those people have to review your plans that, would be submitted by an architect or an architectural engineer, and they have to be approved before you can make changes. So, not everybody's into that. Now, to combat that, by the way, you could look for a newer home. That's an option. There are some newer homes in Montclair, and just something to consider. So that sums up the pros and cons for living in Montclair. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or my partner, Greg Nicholas. Our contact information is below. And if you like this video and you want to see more, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.